And at one of the platform showcases about halfway through last year, they said, we're not going to support you if you have a problem with your Terraform if you haven't asked Claude to do it. And that wasn't because we think
fair.
Claude will get it right. It was bold, right? That's
Yes.
huge. We've got data now that shows that your LLMs are going to be more successful the higher the quality are in your code base. Yeah. And what I find is really interesting, which again has a nice human analogy, is that your token spend is lower as well. So they spend less tokens in high quality code to find out what they need to do and to make the change.
Hey, Luca here. Welcome to a new episode of the Refactoring podcast, where every 2 weeks we interview a world-class tech leader. Today's guest is Stuart Caborn, distinguished engineer at loveholidays, which is an online travel agency with millions of customers around the world. I'm talking with Stuart because his team is doing AI coding for real. They operate an extremely complex product and technology, with each engineer deploying to production more than 80 times a month, with more than 60% of production code being written with AI, all while maintaining an absolutely elite change failure rate under 1% and with perfect code health. So let's see how they pull this off. Welcome, Stuart, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Luke. I'm very excited to have this conversation.
So, Stuart, you're a distinguished engineer at loveholidays, which is an online travel agency based in UK with millions of customers. And we are talking today because we both joined a webinar a few weeks ago with Adam Thornhill and our friends at CodeScene. And you made a presentation about your team journey in adopting AI, which was astounding to me. So hard data, real world success, exactly the type of story that I think we all need to understand better. And so I thought we have to talk more about it on the podcast, basically. So are you ready to give away the secret sauce? That's the first question.
Of course, I'll talk about what we are allowed to give away. But yeah, the secrets are not so secret. So I think everyone can do
Love it. Love it. So first of all, to give ourselves better context, just tell me more about loveholidays. So like, what does your team look like? What are your biggest challenges? So a bit of context about what you work with.
Sure. Yeah. So as you said, so we're an online travel agency based in the UK. We're expanding through Europe. And we have ambitions to go obviously past Europe and get bigger than that. So the challenges are that we are essentially a brokerage application. So our job is to find out what is for sale in the market, package it competitively, and offer it in a way that's more attractive than all of our competitors, and therefore we make more money and sell product. So the technical challenges are dealing with that complexity of data that is out there of very varying qualities and shapes and structures, pulling that together, indexing that, converting that into trillions of packages multiple times a day for a very efficient amount of money, and then selling that effectively on the site like fast and accurately.
Yeah, that's a pretty daunting task, and I really empathize because we have talked a little bit before starting the interview. I've been CTO and founder of an online travel agency myself for almost 10 years here in Italy. We had many customers as well, millions of customers here, and I mean, I think for people who are not in the travel space, I'm not sure everyone understands how complex and unforgiving the travel space is. There's big payments, real-time data, customer support, frauds, and all of this on top of, I think, the amount of legacy in the travel space is second only probably to banks. I don't know. So, I mean, for people at home, there's a ton of complexity in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not like buying a can of beans, right? For all of us, like buying your holiday is a huge emotional experience. It's the thing we all look forward to. So like the idea of like letting someone down on that purchase is something that's unforgivable. And if you look around you right now, I mean, with what's going on in the world, you can see the complexity of suddenly when airports shut down or destinations aren't available, like these things get very complicated very, very fast. So getting that to the point that people have a good time regardless of what the world does to us is part of the challenge.
I'm kind of glad I'm not around anymore in the travel space this time specifically, but I was around during COVID, and I mean, I remember the absolute chaos and madness, with support tickets and even us operators not knowing what would happen basically, and it's, as you said, I mean, holidays are something big. You don't want to let anybody down. So it's you feel big responsibility, especially when it's your customers. You're an actual travel agency. People pay on your website. It's not like a search engine. So it's complicated, but it's also fascinating.
Yeah, it's very cool. And it's a really satisfying thing to do as well, to sort of know that you're sending people to have a good time is a nice treat in our industry, I think, as well. There aren't many
totally
allows to do this.
Hey, if you're using AI to code, you know the pain. Too many terminal panes, multiple agents running at once, copy-pasting context between them, and trying to remember which branch has what. So the bottleneck is not writing code anymore, it's coordinating the agents. And I've been trying a new app these days from Augment Code called Intent, purpose-built to solve this problem. Intent is a developer workspace built for orchestrating agents, not just running them side by side. It starts with the living spec that updates as agents make progress, so every task stays aligned with no manual coordination. Intent works best with Augment's Oggy and their context engine, but you can also bring Cloud Code, Codex, or Open Code. Intent is what comes after your IDE. Try it for yourself at augmentcode.com/intent. Totally. So let's get to the AI journey, because I'll give the bottom line up front so people can have a grasp of what we're talking about, because I noted a few figures from your presentation and from your recent blog posts. So you said that as of today, each engineer deploys to production about 80 times a month. And that 60% plus of your production code is written with AI or by AI, all while maintaining like elite change failure rate within 1% or so. And to add insult to injury, code health also improved a lot in the process. So no downsides. So my first question is, of course, this has been like long time coming, long journey. My first question is, was this like just an organic progress, or at some point a while ago you stopped and said, okay, let's invest in this, let's do this and that, and let's become an AI first team or something like that?
Yeah, we've been on this journey for a while, and it has been deliberate. I think like the sequencing for us has been good as well, because we started with the decision to invest strongly in technology and build a very strong technical base. And the code health was part of that journey before AI. So we started on that journey of, okay, we need to improve the code health for our human beings because they have better outcomes when they're working with code of a high quality, right? We make fewer mistakes, so the work is more predictable, and we love the work that the code scene guys are doing because they can put research and hard data to this. And we're fans of hard data and research. So when AI came along, we took the same mentality to it. I think we started with, we need to understand AI, we need to go onto this journey. And as we understood more and we understood the success and failure modes of applying agentic coding to our world, that was when we started to realize that we need to layer guardrails and processing over the top of that. But from a position of understanding from experiments in our world, what that meant to us. And so I think that's sort of the position we're at now. So the code quality has continued to increase as a virtue of the fact that we're putting in guardrails inside our agentic process to teach them how to improve the code in a way that we like it to be improved. The same way as we're working with our Mark 1 human engineers to agree how we want our code to be and continue that journey forwards. Because for both the thing that was quite a light bulb moment for us sort of summer last year was that the machines are struggling in almost the same way as the humans are as well. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
starts to make you think.
Yeah, it's always we often say what's good for humans is good for AI, and vice versa, and it feels too anecdotally, and I mean your story confirms this. So when you say you got into this journey about code health even before AI, right? Was the when was it? Was it 2024, 2025? Let's create a small timeline for this.
Yeah, so we've been thinking about how to improve code quality through 2023 and 2024. So one
Okay.
thing that we do at Love Holidays is we gather sentiment analysis every quarter from the engineering department and across Love Holidays. And one measure that we'd consistently failed to improve was code quality. And the question is
Yeah.
like, how do you feel about your code base, essentially?
Yeah.
And so we tried a number of initiatives of ways we thought we could try to do something about this. And so January 2025, we said, okay, let's put CodeScene in and make a bet on improving code quality. And the bet that we placed there specifically was the concept of where the code is hot. So the ask for our engineers was, don't try and boil the ocean, just where we're active in the code, let's just start there. And just all we'll do is
Yeah.
we'll keep that good. And then we move
Yeah.
that forward. And it's kind of like sort of lava coming out of a volcano. You're laying down some code that's hot at the time, but as it cools and it solidifies, if that's in a good shape, the next layer on
Yeah.
top, maybe that will be good. And
Yeah.
so we started that. And then as AI arrived, we were at a good point in that journey to say, okay, well, AI is not allowed to make it worse either, right? And
Yeah.
so the commit that the robots make, the robot is a tool. The person who asked the robot to do the work, they own that commit. It's still yours. Keep the quality
Yeah.
up. Let's
Yeah.
find ways to
Yeah.
do that.
So when you say you prioritize hot code, it's the idea of these hotspots, right? Where there is the parts of the code that are most frequently touched, that have highest churn. And so the idea behind also the research at CodeScene and other companies is that code that you touch the most frequently, you need to keep it in high regard and keep it the highest quality possible, because that's the most important thing to do, as opposed to, I don't know, prioritizing working on tech dev just on how bad the code looks like, but maybe it's bad code that is stable, so it doesn't pose any problem.
Yeah, it's absolutely that. And it's interesting, sort of, if you analyze your code base, the cooler areas are often fine. The quality is fine because they've not been worked upon. They've not become as important to the business. They haven't
Yeah.
had to be changed on that day. We absolutely need to make Black Friday's deal or whatever it is that your business is trying to do. So it's
Yeah.
just sort of keeping that honesty and putting in the guardrails in place to say, okay, it's important that today is also a good day for the code base, and tomorrow and the day after that.
Yeah.
And so the guardrails are a way, just like unit tests are a way of saying, okay, the code has to pass the behaviors we expect. Then the quality guardrails are the same thing, right? Is the code has to be structurally as readable as it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Ideally.
Yeah. Totally. And so related to this, I remember, I think it was in your presentation or maybe in your blog post when you said that it all started with making quality visible. And I love this sentence. So what did you do exactly?
Yeah, so making things visible is quite a thing at Love Holidays, and I guess in many places as well. So we like to build data products around the information. And so for people who don't know what a data product is, the way that I think about that is in the same way as the microservices and componentization in runtime systems give you domain boundaries that you can use to rationalize your complexity of your system, then data products are the same for your data lake. So that is okay. So we have a basket product, we have orders and bookings, we have.
Yeah.
But one of the data products we built was code health and quality, and so and we have the same for incidents, and we have the same for deployments. So you can find this information, and so once we've got these data products in place, then we put those up on dashboards. Well, that was what we were doing before MCP arrived on the scene, but now it's
Yeah.
available ubiquitously, because the other thing we then built as well was, okay, let's make these data products available to everyone at Love Holidays. And
Yeah.
the easy way to do that with our new USB-C connector is to plug that into MCP and make that available. So now you can have your dashboard, but you can also just ask Claude, like, how's my team doing versus yesterday or or 3 months
Yeah,
ago.
I love this. And I love that just how this helps people. I guess it empowers AI a lot now that there are MCPs. Now you can plug this kind of information for AI agents to cross, find correlations and find patterns and make better decisions. So is this what is happening, that they're accessing the data lake and doing better things because they have better access to data?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so our journey for making sort of data as knowledge available to people through AIs has been on a journey as well. And what we found is that people are more willing to ask slightly more complicated questions of the data because they're not writing the SQL or they're not building the dashboard.
Yeah.
Right? You've
Yeah.
taken that barrier away. So you can ask whatever you can think of, and you can join to things.
Yeah.
So you can say, okay, I don't know, do bookings or incidents have a correlation with code quality during Black Friday? Right? You can if you can think of a question and you can explain in a way that the AI can understand what you need and it can link the data, then you can suddenly start to get really interesting answers. So we're finding that the engineers who are into the data and want to dive deeper are asking complicated questions, but equally, as we've made the data more accessible, people who needed a business analyst before to build them a dashboard can now go straight to the data themselves, which again, it increases our business analyst capacity as well, because they can focus on their specializations where they need to really do that work, and also help build better data products as well, because that's their...
That's so interesting. So you find that, top use cases are more around like business intelligence or even troubleshooting issues. Maybe, you can pinpoint to different things that correlate. As you said, is there any relation between bookings and outages and stuff like that? What are some top use cases that are happening right now in the team?
Yeah, that was actually our poster child use case for it. You're right on the money. It was one of my team's engineers who was building the MCP at the time. We had an incident, and so used it to say, okay, well, for all our incidents, we need to publish what our estimated loss of bookings is. Like, that's how we measure how bad an incident is. Like, how much money do you lose? And yeah, so he posted into the Slack channel where the incident was running as, okay, I think the impact on the bookings was this. One of our head traders replied with, that's okay, but your modeling is wrong. If you need to be asking this question, he replayed the question back to the AI and came back with within one of the expert what the booking loss was. So that was cool, because we could then distill that down into a prompt. And so then suddenly we have instant analysis. Like, anyone can run this prompt and get instant analysis if they can describe accurately what their problem is.
Yes.
So that ability just to encode knowledge rapidly and then now it's available is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's incredible. I can feel the excitement myself while you're describing this, because I also think that, when there are successful stories, they also create this kind of momentum where, when people feel the tool works, they will want to encode more and more data on it, right? They want to add things, and all of a sudden data is like first-class citizen, right? We need to store this, we need to make it available to people, to agents, so we can make better decisions. It feels like a flywheel.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, a good example today was we were reflecting on why building a particular dashboard was hard, and the answer was a better data product on top of the existing data products to refine down like the higher business concepts that we wanted to expose, so that they were just available. And again, the reason we want that is because, and then Claude will know it, and so they don't need the dashboard. They will be able to ask this, and as exactly you say, it just feeds on itself. And yeah, the ambition grows, which is super exciting as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. May I just ask how this works? Is it like traditional like ETL pipelines that get into like data warehouses and Claude access that, or is it on a regular database, or there are things that live on files? If a team is listening to that and wants to get started with consolidating this, what would be your advice with respect to what works for you?
Yeah. So I think step one would be Google data products, because that's, if you haven't heard that, start there, because that, if you haven't learned that, will probably blow your mind, I think. And the thing we did there was establishing years ago. I think we've been building these for getting on for 5 years now, and
Yeah.
probably longer if you go back to the early concepts before we'd established the patterns that worked. And now, but the pattern is you have to have very strong governance around owning the quality of the API. So treat your data like a good quality API. So for a REST API, you would have a good Swagger documentation and
Yeah.
explain how to use it. In our world, that turns into BigQuery data sets and tables, and we have very strong rules on the quality of the documentation comments in the strings there. So that gives you a self-describing data set, and we use DBT as our pipeline. So DBT is quite a handy technology. I don't know if you're aware of that, which just allows you to use files to transform the data. So again, it's a simple building block, and once you've got those building blocks, then the source, I guess, we added that makes this an AI conversation is then we expose the DBT metadata and joins and usage queries that we could see from our real users to explain to an MCP, here are the data products that are available to you, here's how you can join them, here are the use cases for the data.
Yeah.
And at that point, you've got that next level of meta information that allows the AI to go, aha, right, this is where people information, here are the baskets. I can join baskets to orders and bookings using this reference. And it's getting that right is then the next piece of the puzzle. And then after that, which is the journey that we're on now, is then to start putting evals and feedback loops in place so that when you get it wrong and recover, you can improve. And so that brings you back to your point of a flywheel is, okay, so you know if it's working, and can you measure if it's working? So that's a huge thing for this year, I think, now is to really get great evals of like the use cases and to be able to provably understand that the data is doing what we want. And so that's a hot topic in data engineering, data analysis at Holiday.
I absolutely love this. I mean, I love that we went on this unbelievable tangent, starting from talking about code health and you saying, code health is part of our data lake and was made available to people even before AI. And I want to get back to that for a minute. So you said, okay, we started this journey, we started tracking code health, we made it available and visible to everyone, dashboards and then AI, etc. And then what? Then did you enforce like targets for this and improved gradually? Where did you go from there?
Where did we start? We started by explaining to our engineers why we believed it was important and try and get the message across of like, we think this will work and this is the bet that we would like to place. And the starting point for that, and here is research data, here are numbers that we think we believe, and we expect to see these outcomes. So there weren't any hard targets. No one had an OKR goal, but we did make it visible, and we celebrated success. So like the teams who were at the top of the board got into a little bit of friendly competition, which was cool. And obviously my team joined in, so we wanted to be at the top, and so there's that side of it. That gave kind of a momentum. We also tried to publish if it was helping. So if teams were finding that life was getting easier, like did it feel better in the code base? And we had the 3 monthly cadence of, well, is it working? So over that year, we saw it wasn't just the lead measure of the hotspot that was going up, but also we found that the lag measure of sentiment was agreeing with it. So the humans were saying, okay, it feels a bit better. It feels a bit better this month than last month. And so that also helps to build credibility, because at the end of the day, that's arguably as important as the hard numbers, because the structural measure will tell you that your code is readable, but people's feeling of quality is bigger than that. That's, do we think the system is meaningful? Do we think it works? Like, is it doing what we want it to do?
I 100% agree with this. I mean, on the newsletter, I often write about engineering metrics, for example, right? And when people ask me where do you start, I always tell them start by asking engineers how they feel about things. If you have never done that, do developer surveys, do sentiment analysis, as you said, because engineers know where the problems live and when they are, and you can start from there and then move to quantitative metrics and telemetry and more sophisticated stuff. So did you only measure the sentiment of people, or eventually also measure delivery metrics and see that maybe you were shipping more often and things that are more quantitative?
Yes, so we've been very, very strong adopters of all of the DORA measures, which the audience are aware of, before the code health. So this has been how we've measured success in terms of how fast are we making deployments to production, what's our mean time to recovery and discovery of incidents and all of that good stuff. So yeah, we use deployment as our measure for productivity, because that's pretty unambiguous. How much are we putting out to production and into our systems, and that's growing. So we see that's growing between 20 and 30% year on year, depending on how you measure it. Because obviously for us, deployments are a bouncy thing, but clearly going up. So that can I say that was code quality? I don't think that we can, because like there is continuous improvement going on at Love Holidays in every aspect of the business. So there's a lot of confounding factors in there. So we can measure that we're doing a thing and it's working. We can measure people are happy. We can also measure we're shipping more business product than we wanted. So the combination is which bit of the cocktail is super magic.
Does it really matter? Yeah. At the end of the day, yes, you can say maybe code quality makes people happier and they're more productive because they're happier, not because of the code quality itself. But does it matter? It does not.
I think because I mean, one of the from the engineering perspective, like engineering happiness is very important to us because it has tangible outcomes.
Yes.
I mean, one of them is just retention. Like people who are unhappy leave.
Yes. It's very measurable from a financial point of view. Yes, churn matters.
What's very cool with us from the AI angle is that as well as making the developers happy, it is also making our agents more efficient. Because the even more recent research that came out this year from the code team guys, again, we've got data now that shows that your LLMs are going to be more successful the higher the quality are in your code base. And what I find is really interesting, which again has a nice human analogy, is that your token spend is lower as well. So they spend less tokens in high quality code to find out what they need to do and to make the change, which is intuitively makes sense. Having been a human wandering around bad code and good code is like you get to the answer quicker, right? So so it saves you money in terms of buying tokens. It saves you time in terms of waiting for the AI to generate the outcomes. And the probability of success is higher as well. So you're more likely to roll the dice and hit sixes than ones. So.
I absolutely love this. I think I'm wondering if we will get to an agreed upon metric about something like tokens spent for feature or something like that, where you can measure, the engineering efficiency by the amount of AI work that is needed to ship anything on average, and it should be as little as possible.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's almost akin to measuring performance of, say, a pod in a Kubernetes cluster. It's like we measure it on the constraints of the system and how much resource we're going to give it. And tokens are a finite resource, the same as anything else, I think. So, okay, so if we work on this high quality system that's well factored and is well documented and has all the agent skills to make a change, and I can do a change in 30 seconds, surely token spend is way better there than in this terrible thing that's from 19 whenever, and no one really knows how it works, and the agents go around in circles guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so far we've talked about code health and metrics and improving all of that, even without AI into the picture, right? And how did AI get into the picture, and what did you do to make it like a productive member of your team, and to make it not affect negatively all the good flywheels that you had in place, and maybe even work positively at improving this?
Yeah, that's been a journey as well. I think so at Love Holidays, we made a conscious effort to choose to transition to becoming an AI first company. So what that meant for us is that we, inside the platform technology part of the company, we decided to form a capability to learn how to apply AI and to do that at the coalface with the engineers. So we didn't retreat into an ivory tower or form some sort of secret group in the corner. We looked for business problems that we could get involved with, and then we clustered some people into that area, trying to solve real problems and to solve them with AI. And we made the decision which was the group that I was part of, to always use AI by default.
Okay.
And that's a conscious decision because we want to learn. And so you would get questions like, but couldn't you just type this? It's like, I could, but I'm not going to, because I need to work out what the patterns are, and we need to find them. So we talked about that. And again, in the same way as with Code Health, we talk about it a lot. So it would be a regular event. We have a weekly platform showcase. So we consistently talk about how we're applying AI, not just that group, everyone in the company who's also learning about it. And we make a big effort to talk about it and to share the patterns that we find are working, and the patterns that we're finding outside of Love Holidays as well. So if someone goes to a conference and they learn something, that comes back and it's fed back into the hive mind, and we chew it over.
Was it, may I ask, was it easy to win people over this, or did you meet resistance in getting this type of AI first way of thinking about coding and software engineering in place?
I think you have an adoption curve of developers just like anywhere else. And it was important to listen to both ends of the curve, because people who have concerns. And if you don't listen to those, then you're becoming a little too drinking of the Kool-Aid and not being rational in your thinking process. So for us, it was very important to move from we don't know to we have tried this and it worked or didn't work. And if we try it again, what did we do differently? Was it the model has moved, or we found a better way of prompting? And so we were establishing on patterns that we believe work. So that sort of leads us to, okay, we have realized that if we fold in unit testing into the agentic loop as a hook, then the tests will pass. If we do the same with code quality, the tests will pass, and our quality goes up. If we build a skill over here, then we have outcomes. One of the sort of real milestone moments for me was our core engineering team, where they had put they put a significant amount of effort into building agentic support in the Terraform layer of Love Holidays. So at Love Holidays, you build it, you run it. So the teams deploy their own systems and they own their Terraform modules. But the core engineering team build patterns and golden path, the way for everyone to make it easier. And at one of the platform showcases about halfway through last year, they said, we're not going to support you if you have a problem with your Terraform if you haven't asked Claude to do it. And that wasn't because we think Claude will get it right. It was bold, right? That's huge, yeah?
Yes.
But the reasoning was because we need the feedback now. Like, we want everyone to join us on this journey. And if it goes wrong, we will be there for you. We will help you, and we will improve it for everybody. And so that was just, for me, a brilliant example of just getting in there and then committing to that feedback loop of getting answers quickly.
I absolutely love the approach, and also the boldness. And you mentioned Terraform. I mean, one thing that I'm hearing over and over is that AI is very good at working with code and less good at working with dashboards and clicking around things. And so there is incredible ROI in trying to express everything as code as much as possible. So infrastructure, business logic, of course, and keeping docs in the repo. I mean, the more you can make AI write files, basically, the longer your mileage you can get out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. It's interesting. Last year, around this time, we were getting very excited about MCP. I feel the same excitement around skills inside Love Holidays at the minute. And I see them sprouting everywhere, where people are doing what you said. It's documenting the knowledge of what maybe would be team knowledge or tribal knowledge or a business SOP. It's like, great, but can we turn that into a skill? Can we turn that into a prompt? Can we turn that into an MCP server? Because now Claude knows. So it's like, or Codex or other LLMs are available, right?
It's. I think there's this excitement that comes from seeing the actual compounding works, and I also think it feels so empowering that these docs are simply, I mean, readable by humans, right? It's natural language, so it feels like you can inspect and steer easily how this stuff does things, and you can add ideas, and it's all very visible, as opposed to, I mean, many things throughout history in engineering that it's very hard to understand what's going on, right? With software, instead, you only have markdown docs in natural language, and it still feels like a miracle to me.
Yeah, it's awesome because you turn those into executable documentation when you make them into a skill, which means people use them. And the problem that we've had with, say, an operating procedure or a how-to guide is they rot really fast. But if that thing's being exercised, then, well, it was good the last time it worked, right? So I've got this provable bank of knowledge that I can add to, and then, as I say, it's another one of those flywheels where it feeds on itself, because once I've got my base layer of the core competencies down, then I can start to layer more advanced things over the top of that, and an interesting place.
So I'm curious, when you talk about skills, and I imagine artifacts like agents.md, Claude.md, do you have a shared space for your team where this stuff is continuously shared and talked over for people on your team, or is everyone doing their own experiments? Do you have ceremonies where people share what works for them? What do you do?
So it's a mixture. We have a very early days shared marketplace inside Love Holidays with one or two internal skills, a very small number of skills. An interesting one that we built was to register applications into, say, a system catalog. So we have a data product with all our systems. So think of Backstage, but as data. And we onboarded
analogy.
But it's just data. It's just data, which is phenomenal in how powerful it is. But so that would be an example where we just wrote the skill and we use that skill to make that globally available. Terraform is in there now, and so that's starting to fill in, and we're starting to get contributions of hooks and other things. But at the same time, teams are building their own. So you will find skills in our Flux repo, you'll find them in the Terraform repo, you'll find them in domain specific skills will live inside the mono repos of a group. And I think I quite like that approach, because we kind of need a bit of a Cambrian explosion of people trying things, and some of them will succeed and some of them will grow, and we want to harvest those. So one of the sort of the jobs of my group is like, okay, that's working for you. Could that work for the department? Could it work for the platform? But I think we have to evolve that. And in the same way as MCP was the darling, but now we're looking to skills, maybe skills next year will look a little bit like MCP this year. So we're kind of looking for repeatable patterns that don't rely on the technology too much, because it's moving very fast.
But I don't think so. That is, I mean, MCPs always felt a little bit convoluted, if you ask me. And I mean, there are plenty of convoluted technology that have lasted decades. So it's by itself, it's not an indicator that they're gonna go away. But it's a smell, let's say. Instead, skills, I can't really imagine anything that is simpler than that, right? I mean, it's just files, and so if they go away and there is something else that takes their place, I can't really imagine what that could be.
Yeah, I agree. The thing that really attracted to me skills was that elegance and the fact that you can just check it into a Git repo, right? Like, we understand this well, it's files. And then when you realize that, yes, it can be a markdown file with a Python script which is deterministic, and now I've got an LLM and it has a tool. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, that's what I would do if I was helping a human being.
Yes.
So yeah, I think what I kind of expect is that maybe the ecosystem for distribution gets a little bit more consistent and less version 0.1. But yeah, I'm
an NPM for skills, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe not like an NPM.
Maybe not NPM, but something more. Something that has the ambition that NPM had when it was built.
Yes, exactly. Let's not get to skills modules folder that just grows.
But yeah, the composability of knowledge is again just like it's so elegant that it's great. I really love that side of the simplicity of anyone can understand this. And also, like, we're talking about it from the technology perspective, but this is a business concern as well, right? We can document any business process. So what is our data retention policy, regardless of whether it's an IT system? What is the HR policy on X, Y, Z? All of this stuff can become skills now.
Yeah. Not only that, I think that, because if you think about it, even before there were skills and AI, this stuff could be documented, right? But I think it's the incentive here that has changed it completely. I think when it comes to especially business logic and rules and processes, I think before AI, they were more likely to stay tribal knowledge forever, because there was generally little incentive to create docs that then would become easily outdated, and you wouldn't get a lot of value out of this. Instead, now, if you bottle this information into skills, you have generally like co-workers that can work on this stuff. And so the incentive has completely flipped, and I think we're going to see way more things documented that were never documented before.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it shows us that the systems and structures of organizations are on the cusp of change as well. I think because boundaries emerging. You know, in our area, we're now getting code committed by people who aren't traditional engineers. There are other roles in the company, and that they can generate code, they can create prototype ideas, they can do this and the other. So in the same way as, well, anyone could now write code, why can't anyone have the knowledge of how this process works? And that, from a business systems perspective, is really interesting, because now I can start applying systems thinking practices across my organization. And MCP Insights for us, where we're exposing data to anyone in Love Holidays who needs to have access to it, was like our first toe in the water, I think, of, oh, this is interesting, it's crossing boundaries. So it starts in an engineering team. We built an MCP server, it goes on to data engineering. Well, they've never run a Go server before, and now analysts want to run something, and analysts need to host an internal website so that people don't need to install an MCP server. And now we want to get this to finance, right? And so it goes through your org structure. This is just one small example that everywhere this is what's next, I think.
I remember a chart from your presentation about the progression of the AI adoption, and I remember you said the target that was not 100%, was above 100%, like 110%, something like that, because you said you wanted not only all engineers to do this, to use this, but also some non-engineers to to start doing some prototypes and coding for their own things, internal tools, because you make things doable for them.
Yeah, and it's happening now, and it's really cool. It's very exciting. Obviously, from the technical guardrails perspective, that raises interesting challenges, because now I have my expert users, but I also have my novice users in my technical estate.
Yes.
So we have to manage that. But once we've solved that problem, there was a lovely interview that Boris Cheney gave maybe a month ago, where he likened Claude Code to the invention of the printing press.
Yes.
And his point was that you needed monks to write books, but now
Yes.
anyone can write a book if they can print it. And
Yeah.
we're now moving into this area that anyone can create software. Now, not everyone is going to write The Lord of the Rings, but we don't need everyone to write The Lord of the Rings. Some people need to write pamphlets that are going to live for a week. Like,
Yes.
there's a nightclub with these guys are playing, right? I don't need engineers for that.
Yes. Yes, I think I remember the interview. I think it's a perfect analogy, and could be unsettling, for engineers to, get to wrap our heads against this reality where it's not our Legos anymore, and everyone can do this. What's our role? That's why I'm asking, how this is received within the team. Are people excited? Are people scared? Because I think different people receive this differently. I don't know how has it been for your team. If you're more in the excited, you're clearly excited, as I am, but maybe not everyone is in our camp.
But if I'm honest, I've moved through scared and out again a few times, and maybe in a given day I'll move from excited to scared and back again.
Let's chat again in a couple of weeks and see.
I think, because we know the future is different, and we know that 5 years from now it's not going to be the same as it was.
Yeah.
But if we're honest with ourselves, this isn't a new thing in IT, right? I mean, if we go back 10 years, what we had 10 years ago was very different to what we have now.
Yes.
What we had 20 years ago.
Yeah.
We couldn't do what we're doing now. So we've always had to reinvent our jobs and rethink our levels of abstraction and when we add value. And for me, every time this has happened, we've just become more able to do more things, and the ambition grows.
Yes. I think that's the right framing.
So,
but then, again, let's check in 2 weeks. Again.
I'm hoping that people still need a few books printed that I can write.
This is a good week, but let's revisit and circle back. But anyway, you mentioned guardrails before, and I know this has been like a big part of what is making AI contributions successful, and make sure they do not, diverge the level of quality, that drift the level of quality on your code base. So, how do you think about this, and what are exactly the guardrails that you have put in place in your developer process to make AI effective and productive?
I think that the main principle has been the same as we would have had in the pre-AI days of thinking in terms of DevOps processes. And what I mean by that is, can we shift things left? So
yes,
if I let an AI run amok with no guardrails and just let it build some code and then tell it to push into my CI server, I'm not overly concerned I'm going to take the production system out, because it's going to be gated by my CI server. But what I need to happen is that I don't incur this waste and rework, which is caused by sending the wrong answer into the machine and having it thrown back at me, because all I've done is burn tokens and time. So the guardrails that we provide for the AI is largely, are you going to send into our deployment pipeline code that's of the quality that we need it to be? And we start there, I think. So can I teach the agent that the test should all pass and that the coverage should be the right level? Can I teach the agent that the code quality is at the level that the team would like it to be? And that's the basic starting point, and then you can make it more sophisticated after that. So depending what problem is you're trying to solve. But I don't think we need to make it much more complicated than that in essence.
Yeah. So once, let's make an example. Let's say you put in place code health gates and testing coverage, and of course tests pass, and maybe docs update when they need to. At that point, do you review all the code manually? What's the level of control that you are comfortable giving up versus what you want to, retain control over?
Yeah, that's something that I think is in transition at the minute. So for us, I would say we're generally in early days, and at the minute, like if I talk to myself of what I was doing today, I'm reviewing what Claude sent into the pipeline myself.
Yeah.
As we get more confidence in the guardrails being correct, I think I'm going to care less over time. But right now, we're still checking. So I think at the minute, it's very much trust but verify, and verify is done by a human.
Yeah.
The teams who are more advanced than me and who are going faster, and they're the guys who have got the high quality, they've got the guardrails in place, and they're running multiple sessions at the same time. They're sort of at that higher end of Steve Yegi's competency framework.
The gas town.
Yeah. So we don't have a gas town yet. Maybe in a year, but
maybe next month.
Maybe next month when someone vibes it. I don't know. But they're the guys who they're starting to say, "Oh, right, we're writing more automation around review." And I think we're not going to get the 10x productivity if we gate on human attention at the pull request. In my opinion, I think we have to escape that. We have to do that by putting more guardrails and more detection in. So we need guardrails at the front, and we need what we've always had, which is observability where it counts in our production systems and whatever pre-production environments you might have in your world to detect the guardrails have missed, right? That's your defense in depth all the way through the system. And I think if you're looking to have AIs change code rapidly, you really need to start there again. You've got to have that in place, and you'll know that you've got that right because your MTTR will be low. And so again, it sort of comes back to focus on the basics of your engineering. It's like, have you got the observability in your system that tells you if you made a mistake in prod, and can you roll back really, really fast before it becomes a problem? In which case you can make mistakes in prod, but you can't until you've achieved this. And that was true 5 years ago, right?
Yeah. I think this is a wise take, but I feel conflicted in a way that I don't know how the workflow should change about reviews and this kind of stuff. I've even tried to write something about it, because I believe that if we write less code, we will also be reviewing less code. I don't believe in the breakdown of our work shifting too much towards one of the ends. We're doing 80% code reviews in our time and only 20% writing. I don't think this is happening. Otherwise, we'll become like those engineering managers who insist doing code reviews for everything when they do not understand code anymore, and they just block their teams. But at the same time, I don't see how we can kind of give up some of that level of control, because you may have gates and super important, but I'm still not sure how you can intercept like a bad abstraction, right, or some kind of drift with respect to specs that it's not immediately visible in the behavior. I don't know. I don't know where we go from here.
It's a really tough one, isn't it? I think at the minute we still need humans reasonably in the loop to spot poor design decisions, which I think was what you were describing there.
Yes.
Yes, it compiles, but are we building the wrong thing?
It compiles, tests pass, and code health is 10 out of 10, right? Yeah. But it's the wrong abstraction. It doesn't scale. It doesn't work. It's not what I wanted. Yeah.
I think your point about people reviewing code who have no business reviewing the code, to me, feels a lot like change advisory boards and that sort of gate that Dora railed against, because they said it's provably just causing more problems because all it's doing is slowing you down. It's not adding value in the process. So I think maybe it comes back to that, is like we need to challenge whether the human has value in the process. And why. And again, I think Dave Farley talks about this when he talks about proper deployment pipelines, and that if you have human gates in your process, you don't truly have a deployment pipeline because you've got a manual step that you have to go through. So again, it comes back to engineering, maybe, that why do you have that step? What's that for? Can you do something about that step that means you don't need it anymore? And again, they're the hard questions to answer, because we have to improve our engineering standards to get to that point, and not every team is always going to be there right now. So maybe that's where it goes, that the teams that are going to get those true productivity gains are those teams who have actually invested in that base engineering and have got a very good process through. But to your point about, are we building the right thing, that engineering process will have to also measure functional correctness of the system. And does it do what we need it to do?
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, humans make these mistakes too. So I think it's a fallacy to think that, you know, before we fully give up some control on some things, we need the system to be perfect, right? I mean, there will be mistakes, just like there have always been, but you get to a point where, as you said before, if your MTTR is good, if you deploy fast, I mean, if you have a good pipeline, then even when a mistake comes, you recover fast, and that's how you should think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think these old values and principles still hold true in this exciting world of AI. It's going to go at a faster pace. So it's even the margin for error gets bigger, I think. But in many ways, is that different to just saying we're going to 10x our developer department and suddenly 10 times as many people are going to be building code? You'd have those same problems, right, if you tried to scale.
Exactly.
So
it's probably the same thing. So we talked about guardrails and tech, but has the process changed also? In the development life cycle, from specs to releasing code, the fact that now you can get coding is obviously faster, and now it's fashionable to say the bottleneck has moved, it's elsewhere. So have other parts of the process changed in your team to accommodate for higher throughput or more AI work or else?
I think that's very team specific for us at the minute, depending on what we're building and how we're building it, because there is diversity in how people are using the tools day to day. There are a couple of things that I think I'm noticing. One is the teams who were pair programming a lot, that practice is changing, and it's moving more to a collaboration adjacency model, because everyone's pairing with an agent or multiple agents. And so two people staring at Claude chuntering through its tokens feels a bit weird. But yeah, and so that's happening in terms of like the developer loop, which is really interesting.
It sounds kind of depressing. We need to find a good framing about this. Instead of pairing with people, now people pair with agents. I know it's good, but there's also this angle of how humans still...
It's properly dystopian, isn't it? But that's the thing that's interesting, is because why I said it's like the collaborations, because it's still really, you still need someone to, that you kind of do like a fork join merge thing going on where so I'm it would have been pairing with the guy on the team that I'm working with at the minute, but we're checking in, and it's like, okay, we actually need your point of view. And so they're moving into conversations of, I don't know what the answer is. That sort of does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
We need to align on architecture.
You made a good job trying to spin it in a way that is less dystopian. You sold it to me.
It makes me a little sad, because I love pair programming. So this is one of like my joys in software. But it's changed. That's changed. I think from the review side of it, that's changing. What other practices? I think we're still experimenting on what it means to specify work for an LLM and how to manage that. I think there's overall consensus that small increments are good, and banking that change is good. And again, we can point back to lean theory saying, well, that's a good idea anyway, get the batch size down. But I don't see big changes there. The developer
So you're
process,
not, sorry to interrupt, so you're not, as others are writing and saying, like, resorting to creating big, deep specs beforehand so that you're sure that the agent gets everything exactly right, but rather let's work on small things at any given time and iterate fast.
Yeah, that's definitely our preference. We've had a few goes with big deep specs, and generally the people who've tried that have come away with we don't think the experiment works. We've proven wrong, but so far, spec rot is a thing, I think.
No, but I'm not convinced either, and I'm happy to hear this testimony.
Again, I think it calls to my confirmation bias as a diehard sort of XP programmer from back in the day. Like the idea of doing all this big old design up front. I mean, I remember that world, and I don't want to go back to it, even with an help me. And again, to your point of, aren't you more likely to make your design mistakes at the front? And even if an AI is building your system, if I release a small piece of behavior, won't I still learn just as? And I'll learn quicker because it'll do it faster. So why wouldn't I shorten that feedback loop and just get the feature back? Get the feedback.
But also, I mean, I think in many real world cases of features we want to make and stuff, it's like your understanding of what you want to build evolves when you look at progress that is made, and it's very hard that you can come up with the perfect spec at the very beginning of something. Or I mean, it takes maybe a lot of time, a lot of research. It's just not the right way of making this. It feels like, as opposed to let's just try to make the minimal amount of progress that can inform our decision making about the next step. As an XP practitioner, feels like the right way to me. But we have also just said that we should not pair program anymore. So I hope that Kent doesn't watch this.
I'm so sorry, Kent.
I failed you.
But I think pair programming is just going to evolve. It's become something else. We just haven't got a better name for it. But I think and AIs are really good at reflecting on what worked well and what didn't work well. So when you release an early revelation for me was, and I'm sure we all went through this, was don't try and write the spec for the LLM yourself. Describe it what you want to get it to build you the spec. But in the same way, you can get it to reflect on, well, that didn't go as we expected. Okay, let's have a retrospective on how this session went. And so you got so many opportunities for feedback loops that, again, you can just...
It's true.
You can just pour it back in.
It's true. I think it's a revelation the first time that you try to have AI create a spec, expand on your thoughts. Like you share some idea, some intent that is messy and short, and you see it expanded into full-fledged spec. And it feels like a step of the feedback loop and a step of the process that did not exist before, generally, like that you can inspect and refine and see what did it get right and wrong about the spec, and how can I create a skill about making a good spec? What does a good spec look like to me? And
again, I think that's because it would have been hard before, right? Like the reason that we stopped, like the reason that the agile practice was working code over documentation, again, wasn't because we didn't think the documentation was important. It's just we want the code first, and we've only got so many cycles. But now the documentation is so cheap, providing you can keep it current and accurate, and providing that you're able to detect that the agent hasn't injected something that wasn't your intent into what it's producing. I think that the documentations are just so useful now. Why wouldn't you make them?
Yeah, that's true. So, Stuart, thank you so much for this wonderful chat. I think we covered a lot of ground, and we could have stayed like 3 hours, I think, keeping talking about this. So I'll check back, as I told you, in like 1 month or so to see how things are going.
I would like that very much. Thanks for a great conversation, Luca. It's been really, really good fun.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this chat valuable, you can subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Also, please consider giving us a rating or leaving a review, as that really helps other listeners find the show. You can find all past episodes and learn more about the show at refactoring.fm. See you in the next episode.